Welcome to How to Sparkle in Virtual Classes with Pear Deck. Pear Deck is a Chrome browser extension, and it is there to help when you are working virtually or even in live classes. I think we're all tired, and getting students to engage, especially over Zoom, can be exhausting. It can make you feel like you are turning yourself inside out. And so my name is Ari Rooney. I teach in the English division, and I have used Pear Deck over the past quarter, and so I thought I would share it with you. You can see Pear Deck. It's this interactive a slide thing that works. It adds this little stuff at the bottom that you can see down below here. And right now, I'm just going to kind of walk you through a couple of slides and then show you how it actually works in action. I'm going to show you kind of what students see, and then we'll go behind the scenes as well. So, what Pear Deck does, it allows for interactions. If you have slides or content that you have toiled over, that you are fairly certain students aren't even looking at, Pear Deck can allow you to ensure that students are interacting with that live. So it has a function where you can have student-paced work. You can assign your slides, and students can work on this kind of slides or content. And they can do this in Google Slides or PowerPoint and interactively work through these things that you've done, that you've toiled over. And it's kind of nice. And then you can look and see what they've done, and you can even provide feedback, which is pretty cool. If you are doing presentations, if you're exhausted from those Zoom black screens of doom, if you miss that time when they did some of the work and provided some feedback to you, you can have that. You can actually have that back. And that is really neat too. So Pear Deck allows you to kind of throw out some content and throw it back at them so they get to absorb some of it and then work with it, apply it, and that is a really nice thing to get back in this kind of virtual teaching era. You get to see student progress. So you can literally see what multiple students are doing in front of you live. And it's really cool. You have a teacher deck, and I'll show it to you in this presentation, where you can see what students are doing. And you can give feedback to them live. And so if you have been trying to figure out what to do in breakout rooms, you can assign like a Pear Deck for them to do in breakout rooms, and you can see what they're doing and provide feedback to them so that you're not being like, what are they doing in these breakout rooms? I have no idea. In conclusion, it is very, very cool. It has really given me a new way to interact with students. And it's fun for them. They're not just sitting there listening to me chat. So what is Pear Deck? It is a Chrome extension. You can use it with PowerPoint and Google Slides. I prefer and recommend Google Slides because if you put your stuff into Google Slides and then publish it, whenever you update it, it automatically updates it. But you can use it with PowerPoint as well. You can publish. The other reason that I recommend Google Slides is this. If you use Google Slides, you can publish a document called a takeaway afterward that lets students take it with them or turn it in. And what that takeaway is it's a copy of all the slides plus the work they did during that Pear Deck session. So if you did some work like on a paper or on some kind of math or science session, they can take all that work they did and they can have it with them. And it's really neat. They don't lose that work. They can keep it. But they can only do that if you did it with Google Slides. And you have some choices with what you can do. You can add text options to a slide, multiple choice, numbers, websites, drawing, draggable, or audio interactions to your slides, which sounds kind of abstract right now, but I'll show you what that looks like. So for synchronous classes, it has many options. It works really well in live classes. You can give instructor feedback immediately. You can use it for groups in breakout rooms, and it really does put the onus back on the students. You can put up a slide with content, and then you can have students work either one-on-one or in small groups on that content, and or on a small project on that content. It really lets them take ownership of learning and lets them have a record of their work at the end. So it's a neat way of having them do that. It gives them a task, but it also gives them something to do. And it lets you see and respond to their work instead of kind of doing it in a vacuum where you don't know how they're doing or what they're doing. You can also have do this in a self-paced manner where students do this, same kind of idea, but in their own time. So you have students work on this stuff at their own pace. It's an excellent way to interact. You can still leave feedback for a student, but students have a record of work at the end, again, with slides and their work. And so how you log in, and this is what your students would see as well, is you can either go to this join PD and enter this code, and it's going to ask you for your email, and please enter your Green River email. Or you can go directly to this link that I'm putting in the chat. And Rochelle is swearing.
No, I was expressing how I was feeling because it asked me.
Okay. And we'll wait for people to get connected.
I'm giving permissions to Microsoft.
Okay. And as soon as people are connected, we will get started. You can do this synchronously and asynchronously. So this right now, how we're doing it is instructor led, where I'm doing this as an instructor. This is my screen, my instructor screen. And if you go to your Zoom window, you're in your Pear Deck window, go to your Zoom window, and you can see as an instructor, I can see like all of your, at the same time, I can see your names and I can see all of your responses, and I can even give you feedback. Nice work. And that's pretty cool. And then, so I can, there's different little views I can do, and then I can show all the responses to students over back in the Pear Deck window. So you go back to your Pear Deck window, you'll be able to see that. So, but you can do this synchronously and asynchronously. Right now, we're just doing instructor led, so it's neat to do in kind of a live online class. Can you see it now? The show?
I can see it on your screen.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it, but I don't see it on my Pear Deck thing.
I don't know why it's not showing.
Whatever.
All right. The next one is this, and don't answer anything yet. In Pear Deck, there are all kinds of ways you can use it. And this kind of gets to your question, Chitra. You can use it for interaction. If you ever have like slides in Canvas or content that you're fairly certain students aren't even looking at, how many of you have that? How many of you have that?
A
Okay.
good number of hands went up in the.
Now, all right, perfect. Well, this is a way you can use this asynchronously to have students like interact with the content. So they can do this in a student-led mode where you ask them questions or you have them interact with it in some way and turn it in later, like at their own pace. And it's wonderful. Or you can have them do it online. You can create a presentation live in class where you have a certain way. If you're exhausted from the black screens of doom and you want them to do the work, this is a perfect way to do it. It's really nice because you can see student progress as they're doing stuff, and it's lovely. Like, it is the closest way I've found to walking around a room in class and seeing them working on stuff live. And it's the closest way. It's not perfect, but it's the closest way. So it's really, really cool. And so right now, what I'd love for you to do is just write a way that you can think of this, that you may be able to use this in your own courses.
So Ari, when I type it in, how do I know it's actually gone to you?
Because they all go to me. I can see them live. Do you want to
As
see
they're
what I'm
typing
seeing?
them in?
Yeah. Do you want me to see, what I'm seeing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be cool.
Okay. So I can see all of your responses live as you're typing them. So like I can see if students have questions or anything like that. What programs can Pear Deck interact with? And I can answer this question all kinds. Google, Slides, PowerPoint, Teams, Canvas, sorta. And then I can send that.
Cool.
And so I can, like, I see it live and you can change stuff live. Once students know about this, that I can see them, they get nervous and they start deleting things. ALP support, where are the snacks? It's a good question. Where are the snacks? I don't know. For checking student understanding lectures. I'm still struggling a little. I need more ideas before. Yeah, I get that. I could ask students to weigh in how to correct a grammatically incorrect sentence. Yeah, not sure. Mostly asynchronous. I'd love to use it for webinars. I teach asynchronously right now. I'm interested to see how this would work in my assignments. How about low stakes testing or feedback? I was putting my answers in the chat, typing something right now. I have small groups, but I think I would need to do the multiple choice because my students type too slowly. Multiple choice is perfect. And there's lots of other options too besides typing. There's drawing, there's all sorts of stuff. So I'll show you many different options that it has.
Ari, before you move on, can we see what the student sees when you respond to their comment or what they've typed?
I will.
No. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to look in your Pear Deck too.
Yeah.
I can't show you from here, but I can give different feedback to people so that you
Pops up a little speech bubble.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah.
So Ari, sorry, just taking it one step back. So getting them initially set up, do you just tell them, okay, guys, because do you have one window open for Zoom, one window open for Pear Deck, and then they just kind of flip back and forth? Is that difficult at all for them to like keep track of? Because I have two screens, and so I'm looking at both at the same time. But do they even need to see Zoom if they're in Pear Deck?
I'm like, okay, go back to your Zoom window. All right, get
Okay.
back in Pear Deck. And the first
Okay.
time that we do this, I allow extra time, but
Okay.
then after that, they're very used to it.
Okay.
And we don't do this every time, but we do it sometimes, you know, to break up the interaction, because it is interactive and it is fun. It can be very fun. It also is really helpful for some things. It's not helpful for some things. It can just be busy work, but for some use cases, it's really helpful. Yeah. So this is a takeaway from a class that I did. Can you see this? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is where we did a background essay review. And we were just doing the end part of the background. So these are the slides, but we were just focusing on the last part. And these are the slides. And these were this person's answer to the slides that day. And then they were drawing on those slides. And this is like the work, they got to capture the work that they did that day and take it with them. And so it's nice because the work that they did in class, they got to take home. And what is really nice about this is because it's in Google and because they entered the, if you look at this entire thing, because you entered the email address, they can only access, like when they go into this drive folder, they can only access their sheet. It'll only open up their sheet because of the way that this is structured. They only have access to their sheet that is tied to their email. So they can't see their peers sheet. It just automatically only opens up their own. Like when you get yours, you'll only be able to open up your own sheet. It's kind of beautiful. But that's what this looks like. These are all empty because we didn't do those days. So that's how I've been using it for my writing class. Okay, so use cases. How I've seen this used and how we've used it. So this is how I've used it. This is in an English course where students were working on revising their conclusions live in class. The instructor could see and react to responses. So this is where the students actually had their conclusion of their paper. And then in the Pear Deck, the students were supposed to look for information that they couldn't find and answer the question, what couldn't you find that you were potentially looking for, if anything? And how will you further narrow? What is their research question and what is the significance of this topic to your audience? So the peers at Green River. And they were supposed to answer based on these things. How do you feel about your own conclusion right now? And so they were just meant to, they didn't have to put 4 responses, just based on all the things they were supposed to have for their conclusion. How did they feel about their conclusion right now? And so they typed that in and I was able to live look at, like, take a temperature as they were looking at their own introductions, because sometimes, or their own conclusions, you kind of forget what you're supposed to have there, right? So I was able to look at it. And then we went to this next slide, which was a model conclusion, a model fairly good conclusion, where I had them, and this is a drawing one, identify each of these things with a different color. Where they were supposed to, with a different color, identify in here any in the part of the introduction that was the information that couldn't be found, the how the topic will be narrowed further, the research question part, and the significance part. So I had them do that in class so they could see what a good-ish conclusion looked like. And then then I had them look at their conclusion again. And you're welcome to practice this too. It's fun for them to play with these tools and do the different color thing. I mean, it's fun for me too. And it's neat to see what different people do. It's also nice to see what people draw.
I like that it has colors and also highlights and text.
Yeah, it's really nice because you can be like, okay, I highlight this thing in green, highlight this thing in pink, highlight this thing in blank. It emulates an experience, and you can do this on phones. You can easily do this on phones. You can easily do this on devices. I've tested it on both. So, and my students do this on their devices all the time. So go over to the Zoom window and you can see the different responses, right?
Very cute.
Yeah. But at this point, I could give different feedback, or what I would normally do is you can do different, like you can do a list layout or a grid. You can put it on an overlay, which is sometimes great if you have a map. Or you can show responses, which actually that was over in the Pear Deck. But it's nice. So especially if you're like, well, everyone agrees that this is the significance or this is the research question, that kind of thing. So you can do, comparative type of things. And head over to a quiz type thing. And this is just a quiz, I can't talk, a quick quiz to assess who has been doing the reading. And this is a choose the best answer. This is just really quick, low stakes. There's no point to this. This is just so I could see, okay, who's actually reading the book? Because I have no idea. I can't tell. I don't meet these students in real life. When Pax and Greg go south in search of safer land in chapter 17, what do they discover? Just pick one. Yeah. Can you guys see the responses?
Yep, on your screen.
Yep. Yeah, it is not safe in the South is the correct answer. It's a good book. It's very, very sad. It's quite heartbreaking. And then this is another way that you can kind of have some fun. Is Pax Children's lit? What do you think? You can drag the dog. It's supposed to be a fox. And then this is fun to get like an idea of what people think, where the class, is. And then when you show the responses, a funny thing happens usually. People start moving their dogs around. Yeah, look at what you guys are doing. Do you see? Look. Moving your dogs around. This happens all the time.
So I have a quick question on this. Is this, they can put the dog kind of anywhere on the slide, or do you have sort of predefined hot areas?
They can put it anywhere on the slide, but what you can do is you can lock the screen at any time. Like I can lock it right now, and now no one can move anything. So usually they don't, they do the right thing, and then when they see when I share the screen, people start moving it because it's funny. But you can lock it at any time, and I do that quite a bit. I lock it, and I'm like, stop it. But then, I'll unlock it like right now, and I'll be like, all right, you can move it around again, have fun. And yeah, see, it's fun to play with. And, you can do concepts and just let people do all kinds of stuff. How are these two things connected? Is Rochelle still here? This was for Rochelle.
No, she had to bail out.
Oh, shoot. But you can draw on these. You can write on these. So on the drawing slide, you can draw and you can write. Like you can type on these too.
Ari, I'm just trying to get used to the interface a little bit here. So there's not like a save, but you just, as soon as you type your answer, it just automatically goes on there.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So
you
there's no like send or save.
no.
But there is I do see the undo arrow. That's good.
Richard, there's also an eraser tool.
Yeah, I saw
So
that. I saw that. Yeah.
There's all kinds of just like different fields. And, you know, you can use these in conjunction, like with the annotate function on Zoom. You know, you can draw on this and be like, you know, draw here or whatever. But, oh my gosh, you guys, some of these are so funny. Can you see the responses?
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone really drew a poop. I'm quite delighted. But there's all kinds of stuff that you can do with this. And like something that I would do in a class is, oh, I'm going to get out of here. Something like this. You can, you know, explore the area, notice physical landmarks, and keep track for our discussion. So you could do this in like breakout rooms. You could say something like this. I want you to go to Google Earth. I want you to find the looser ecosystem. And I want you to explore the area, notice the physical landmarks, and keep track for our discussion. So to get behind the scenes on how this works, like the nitty gritty, I'm going to end this and kind of go down into my slide share. How this works is you can add to any, I'm doing this in Google, like Google Slides, but it's very similar to how it works in PowerPoint as well. You go to Tools, or I'm sorry, to Add-ons, and you open Pear Deck. And you figure out, okay, do I want students to add text to this? So do I want them to be able to write interactively, like answer a question? Do I want them to do a multiple choice? Do I want them to do a number? So a number would be something like, you know, do I want them to type a number on their student device, or do I want them to display a question to the class or show student responses in real time? You know, and remember that a classroom projector in a virtual class is the Zoom window, and on a student device, it's going to be their computer. Do I want them to go to a website? Do I want them to draw? Do I want a draggable? You can also add audio to any slide. And if you don't know what to do, and to do it, you just, like, let's say we wanted to make this one be a choice. We just figure out what our choices are. Option A could be, you know, monkeys. Option B can be horses. B can be hedgehogs. And so they'd have a multiple choice right here, and that would be this slide, and that's what they would see. But if you don't know what to do, or if you need an idea, one of my favorite things is the template library. And over in the template library, they have all kinds of ideas. They have beginning of lesson ideas. that are slow to show right now. But like draw or type 2 things you already know about today's topic. And remember, these are just slides. You can change what they look like, but you can just like insert this. You can, what do you wonder about today's topic? So you could just insert this right here. And this is a text slide, so students would just, as they came into class and were waiting, they could just start typing what they wonder about today's topic, and that's how you could start class. Another thing you could do, like during the lesson, summarize what you've just learned. Drag the dot to how you're feeling. I'm feeling a little confused. I totally get this. You can do mind maps. And you can change these, but these are where I get some ideas. And, you know, transition and instruction slides. So, and end of lessons. There's critical thinking slides. So, different viewpoints. My point of view, another point of view. You know, sometimes these are pretty valuable. This pyramid one can be valuable. Drawing conclusions, explaining. One that's come up in science a lot, there's a series of slides in here that there's a periodic table of elements that might be, you know, helpful in some way. You can describe what's happening in this image. You can draw arrows to indicate the forces in action. There's a time versus distance graph. There's a cause and effect and a claim, evidence, and reasoning. And this is a series of slides that's a self-paced lab report that people could do in groups or alone. And this whole thing is meant to be a series where it's a text slide, but you go over the whole thing and like you insert all these slides, right? And you do a lab. So these all might be the beginning of something great. And there's all kinds of templates out there. They're just kind of waiting for you to use, adapt them, and that kind of thing. For English, there's Venn diagrams, understanding the reading, you know, 4 area charts, a story map, multiple choice slide. But they're really just cool ways to get interaction that might be helpful. So, resources. I've linked in here teaching resources, training and webinars, and takeaways that might be helpful. And thanks. Thanks for coming. If you have any questions, please email me. I get a lot of questions about the slides I use in here. I use SlidesGo. They're very helpful to me. And please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much.